We had a good session this past session, and I think that will provide a great baseline of where to begin our work this coming year.
MDOT presents the Extra Mile Podcast, Legislative Session.
Got to have the ability to get their product to market.
As long as you're performing, we want to be behind you pushing.
Welcome in to another edition of the Extra Mile Podcast Legislative Session presented by the Mississippi Department of Transportation. I'm MDOT Deputy Director of Public Affairs, Paul Catul, and as always, I am joined by my co-host, Will Kraft. He handles government and constituent affairs here at the agency. And Will, let's just dive right in. And first of all, this episode is being recorded on Friday, January 20th. And today we're welcoming back to the show the Lieutenant Governor of the state of Mississippi, Delbert Hosemann. He was elected in 2019 as Mississippi's 33rd Lieutenant Governor, and he previously served as Mississippi's Secretary of State. Governor, we know it is a very busy time. Thank you so much for joining us today on the show.
Oh, it's good to be here. Thank you very much. 33rd kind of makes you feel old, man. Who are the other guys and girls? I don't know.
Right.
We certainly appreciate you taking the time. I know it's a Friday, folks, but that means nothing in the Lieutenant Governor's office. They're wide open.
We had early morning meetings this morning working on rural health and discussing significant problems the state has with the rural health problems. And then we've done 600 bills, been allocated so far in the last 72 hours. And so they're all long, by the way. We have about another 150 to do today and this weekend.
Some pleasant reading material there.
We'll be on the working day.
I imagine so. Well, just real quick, we'll touch back on last year. It was a great session for MDOT. I think you guys had a great session over there as well. You enjoyed it. Everything went great. Briefly looking back, this is our 3-year plan. We talked about ad nauseum. We've got a lot of projects on the street, and that is a big credit to the legislature, especially the Senate over there, getting the extra funds that we so desperately needed, the resources. And I think we're making progress, right? We're coming along.
Well, I want to go from the map to the road.
Sure.
And we appropriated with the federal government as well about $2.2 or $2.3 billion. We paid, the legislature as a group paid for your maintenance fund of $45 million for this year and next year in advance. So we've already paid our maintenance in advance. So we would hope that the maintenance would be done in advance. And we also devoted $100 million to the Emergency Road and Bridge Fund, which is utilized mainly by the counties, but some by the cities as they come forward. And that's done through a process, an advisory council that you have, and then, of course, comes back to the commission and Brad to make the final decisions. But we have devoted more there than ever in the history of Mississippi. We also matched the $40 million we needed to match for the $200 million for the federal money that came out, in addition to our normal budget requirements, which are about $1 billion from the state. So we have emphasized roads and bridges, and the last time I was here, we talked about the fact that there is a gap between appropriation and dirt.
Sure.
And it was very concerning to me that that gap was too big.
Right.
So we talked with Brad a good deal about that, as well as the other commissioners, and I was proud of y'all to see that you did $963 million in contracts this year.
That's right.
That's very important. Our people, if we're going to take your tax dollars, and all of y'all are taxpayers, if we're going to take your money, we need to see barrels and backhoes out on the streets. So I was very pleased with that. I'm still, like y'all are, I think, frustrated with the time between appropriation and being on the roads. The design team here, and I came through MDOT, and I've sat with a number of your people here in the office before, and I learned a lot about building culverts and stuff. But it was outside my level of expertise, but in any way, I learned a lot about that, and I don't know that the slowdown is necessarily here, although I think we need to get into the sprint mode here.
Sure.
We have an opportunity where we have these funds, and we ought to be turning things that are priorities from MDOT into actual work. So we need to really accelerate the process here further. I'm hopeful that you'll break $1 billion in contracts this year. letting those out. I'm hopeful that you'll finish the preliminary work on 715 Interstate 55 from Hernando up to South Haven area, or short of South Haven area.
Right.
There are a number of ones that have been in the preliminary stage, and we'd really like to go play the game. We don't need to be practicing anymore or any longer than we can. So I'm very hopeful that we'll continue to see an acceleration. Now, a lot of the discussions have been that we get held up by the federal government. The federal government want to, and they change about 3 different times, and we have problems with them, and then they change the rules on us 10 times and all like that. You know, really, that's just part of the deal, I think. And y'all have been good at it a long time, and so when they start that game, we need to, you know, their offices down there on Capitol Street, I think. We just all need to go sit in the waiting room until they approve your plans.
Don, we're coming to see you. You heard it here.
Right here. So I do hope that they will pick up the pace and get really get in the game that you're starting to play and really playing right now, which is we want to take the money that the taxpayers give us and we want to put it in the dirt. And until we do that, we're not really achieving what people hired us to do.
Right, and I think we're at such an opportune time right now where we've got the flush with funds that you just mentioned, and the opportunity's there to get out and get the work out and get it done. Speaking of
set some records,
pace,
man.
That's
Go for
right.
it.
Get that 964 bumping on up.
I want to see one that has 7 or 8 figures in it.
That'd be
a
awesome.
billion or 10 billion or whatever. Go.
Well, and speaking of pace of things like you're experiencing right now, I know you guys are wide open across the street. Just came through the first deadline. What's that first deadline for the folks out there?
That's when you have to have them drafted and filed. Drafting requests were due last week, and then the actual bills had to be filed this week. And so we have all the bills filed that are general bills. Your appropriations bills are under a different calendar, so they'll come later in the session. And we're real hopeful we'll be out of here by the middle of March. We're shooting to be through as quickly as we can this year and every year, actually, so we don't, we save money when we're not here for the taxpayers by not being in session. So we're hopeful to finish early, but your appropriations bill for MDOT, for example, has not made the light of day yet. The general bills, which involve criminal matters, civil matters, divorce matters, all kinds of other things, those are all have been filed and have met whatever the deadline is in the Senate and in the House. So they're out there matriculating. I think the House had about 2,000 bills. We're probably going to end up with about 800. And so so you start with 2,800 or 3,000 bills. By the time all of them are aggregated, that's a lot to go through. And eventually, probably only a few hundred of them will actually pass.
And that is, just to put that in perspective, again, we're talking about a handful of folks and staff with Lieutenant Governor here, about 3,000 bills in the matter of 2 weeks. So lots of reading material. I know, Andrew, you're keeping him busy over there with all those bills for sure.
Yeah, we have like six people working.
Wow. That's a lot of reading.
If you allocate it out, we do about $1 billion a person.
Goodness gracious.
Man.
That is not insignificant. So, Governor, we obviously took care of MDOT last year. Is there any other transportation infrastructure related kind of topics going through the legislature this year? I know we have electric vehicles and that sort of thing going on.
Well, we can touch all of those. We are concerned about our ports and marines. That's you'll see when the Mississippi River didn't go dry, but it went effectively dry. We couldn't get out. We could not get our grain out to New Orleans to get it out to the world. Actually, in the war situation that's going on with Ukraine, it was particularly poignant that we do so. We were not able to do that by barge, which is the most economical way to get things out. Roads and bridges to the ports and harbors out to the world. So you saw the legislature last year put up significant funds to improve our ports and harbors, and I think you will see that again. Some of our rail transportation, particularly our local rail transportation to our new factories and those kinds of things, rail is also inexpensive. And by the way, we're supportive of that because that means we don't have to maintain the road. Obviously, it's a private entity. And so we are very interested in making sure that we have rail transportation, particularly to pick up a lot of our products. But our ports and marines will be a major factor, a contributing factor this year. Last year, we spent $40 million on creating new industrial sites. I thought that was really important. That goes through the Mississippi Development Authority, and it usually takes about $4 or $5 million to have one flattened and the water and sewer and electricity brought to it and everything. It's quite expensive to do all of that. But most of these businesses now are making decisions in a just-in-time. It's kind of a just-in-time inventory. You may have heard that, but they're making these decisions right in an immediacy. And so they're not interested in saying, well, we'll go clear a site and we'll have everything ready for you in 6 months or a year. You know, they're like, we need to build a factory, and where do you got one? Well, we want to say we've got one right here, and it's not shovel ready, it's move-in ready. So you'll see us again, I think, in conjunction with the governor, selecting more sites to be really industrial sites to be fully prepared for industry to come here, because we have a number of different assets. Your roads, of course, are critical aspects of that. The water. If you go past Dallas, they don't have any water. Like they don't have any water. So we have an asset. So we have a number of different assets here in Mississippi. Our people, our community college system, we've done Accelerate, which is how to train our people, putting a lot of money into that. I'd like to see community college be tuition free. Several of them have attained that. Community colleges now, we want our kids to go into tuition-free schools if they want to do that and learn a trade or begin their preliminary graduate studies. So all of those are impacted, and we're working on all of those, which will end up being part of our transportation package.
Absolutely. That's a great reminder that transportation infrastructure isn't just roads and bridges. There's a whole system there.
Yeah.
So, of course, this is an MDOT podcast, but we want to kind of get outside of transportation infrastructure a little bit. What other priorities do you have during the 2023 legislative session?
Well, we have a number of issues or opportunities, and we like to think, well, the way I look at them, but we have issues in our rural health care. And yesterday, the Senate, I was just really proud of them, came out with a rural health bill that would allow where you're not subject to antitrust provisions if small rural health care community hospitals merged together. I thought that was really important. Okay. And we came out with a plan in which to give them some money to really bridge the gap between where we are and where we're going, and I'll tell you about that in a second. But I went to Greenwood and walked the hospital. That's kind of the canary here. After it has rejuvenated itself to not have OBGYN there anymore, they have really downsized. The hospital is 5 floors. They're down to 3 floors actually being used, and some of those are offices for these doctors' offices that they moved into the hospital. They are going to lose right at $20 million this year after they've downsized. So it is not it's not financially viable to continue that. All right. So given that, how do we go about making sure that we don't have babies born in the back of trucks and stuff? What is the challenges for those? So no matter how good your roads are, babies don't normally wait till they get to the interstate. So we got to be careful about that. So what we're looking at now is a process that would allow our small rural hospitals to aggregate their assets and liabilities together, and have a physician that may be at one for every, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and another place Tuesday, Thursday. They may have areas of expertise. They do that kind of thing. We want all of them to have an emergency room and an OB and an internal medicine. But not necessarily if you're having, heart surgery, you can't have that in every hospital or whatever. So you'll see, I think, right sizing of the delivery of medical care in Mississippi. And that will involve a lot of different things. It'll involve the major hospitals that we have, 6 or 7 that are really into this, and it'll involve these smaller hospitals right sizing to something that is continue to be financially viable. And the federal government has come up with a program on rural healthcare hospitals. So there's a lot of work to be done in rural healthcare, and I was real pleased with the Senate in taking the leadership to provide for scholarships for nurses that stay in Mississippi, like $6,000 a year for 3 years. $18,000 will pay off your debt if you'll be a nurse. We're about 3,000 nurses short, which is a good economic life. and also very viable maybe for somebody who wants to come to the workforce for a while and leave it maybe to raise a family and then come back to the workforce and work part-time or whatever. There's so many opportunities for that skill set. When I was in Pearl River County a couple of weeks ago at the community college there, they had 44 nurses in training. They had 200 applications.
Wow.
So as part of our program that was released just a day before yesterday, we're encouraging our community colleges to use their infrastructure. And we'll do infrastructure build out to allow more nurses to basically get into school and then hit really the bedside where they need you. And we don't need to look further than COVID to look at that. Rural health care is a big deal, and then we'll be talking about taxes as well. We think we ought to send the money back to the taxpayers this year. We've been very lucky about that. And I'll get into the financial situation of the state when you're ready to do that.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely.
No, at any time, however you want to run with these topics, you're hitting everything that we wanted to ask you about. I mean,
I can see your notes.
I know it. You're right on top of everything. Well, one thing you mentioned in this conversation already, but infrastructure specific, water and sewer, and the focus that you guys are placing on getting the water and sewer repairs around the state.
Yeah, that's another smart thing I think the legislature did. We told the cities and the counties, if you'll put money in, we'll match it. Now, we got $1.8 billion, and a good bit of it we spent over here, but we took $1.8 billion and we told $450 million of it. We told cities and counties, if you'll put up money, $450 million, we'll put up $450 million. So instead of the state frittering this away some kind of way, we actually had $433 million worth of applications. So there's fixing to be about $900 million in long-term water and sewer, including
awesome.
Jackson, by the way.
That was my next question.
So there's a lot of money being devoted out here and around. Then we took another $300 million and put it in rural water. So people outside of the major municipalities will have clean water. We thought that is a generational change, and by the way, that works into the economics of bringing a factory here or whatever.
Sure.
Then we put like $75 million, which was a match with co-ops, $150 million in broadband all over Mississippi. So we started as a broadband office, and we've got our federal dollars coming in. It's at least another $100 million, and our co-ops have jumped in and spent way more than the $150 million now. They're probably closer to $300 or $400 million getting out into rural broadband. That's critical because our kids can't get educated and a whole bunch of different other things. We can't even farm anymore without having access to the internet. So we have a lot of that going on that's real positive in the transportation area. I was real pleased with that. We saved $350 million, which we did not spend of that money, and we'll come back to, I hope, generational changes.
Have you been pleased with the rural broadband rollout and expansion?
It has been. The co-ops did a great job. The federal government now has given us a whole bunch of other money. They've come up with what parts of Mississippi are not covered. And both Senator Sally Doty, well, she's head of this division now, broadband, and I both dispute the federal government's map of Mississippi. We think that we have significant other things that are not covered by broadband. Mm-hmm. So she has employed a study, and we'll be having it very shortly, about what areas are actually gaps in the coverage. And that's what we'll be going to the federal government with. She's doing a good job, and we should know that very shortly. I think January the 13th actually is a deadline for part of the application process that she's doing.
Okay. The federal map shows us more covered than we think?
Yes. Yeah, I like a lot.
Oh, interesting.
Wow.
Yeah, some of that they give credit to the satellites, like our people can get on satellite or whatever. But it's she's putting in our protest, and we'll see. That'll come back to how much money we get actually to broadband.
That'd be something to follow, yeah.
No doubt. So lots going on in the 2023 session. Kind of look back at your first term as lieutenant governor. Any kind of major accomplishments you want to tout?
Well, I'm pleased COVID didn't get everybody.
That's true.
You know, it was just a horrible event for us. We struggled so much, and I thought the governor did a good job trying to balance people doing healthcare decisions and all this other, and whether we get to do this or not, and where you wear a mask or not. So many of those decisions seem fainter now and foggier now as we've gone past that. But COVID was a huge thing. The legislature, for the first time ever, stopped its session. We actually stopped in February, came back in June, and then back again in the fall. That had never been done in our history. So it was a demanding time, I think, to get anything done, and then to worry about your fellow man and woman in the legislature, whether they were going to be sick or. And we had several. Manley Barton from the House was really struggled. A lot of us I had COVID, and it was very debilitating. So a lot of that struggle, you seem to think that that's just gone. It's not. COVID's coming back in different strains and whatnot. We just have to take normal healthcare stuff. So, I think that was one of the biggest. The other things that we have done that nobody talks about, we have shrunk the size of government. We used to have 26,000 employees. We have 23,000 employees now. We have not borrowed any money in 2 years. That has never been done in the history of this state since 1817.
Wow.
So we have paid off $600 million in principal. Now, when you get to that, when you start looking at we're running the state government like a business, that has also been foreign to the state government. But by right-sizing our employees, and we gave raises to the ones that were here and were working hard, that's appropriate. Then we also have paid off debt. We have $2.7 billion in cash in the state government. $700 million of that is a rainy day fund. $350 million of it is the American Rescue Plan that we have to use on infrastructure. But the rest of that is money that has come over the last year or so because the first year we started, we reduced the budget by 2%. That was hard to do. And we went through COVID and all that other, but we have come out making the state the best possible place for you and your children and my grandchildren to come and live and prosper. So I think we are in the best possible position we've been in. In addition to that, during that time, we gave the largest teacher pay raise ever. I happened to be out actually duck hunting with Sarah Huckabee Sanders for the governor of Arkansas now, and we were talking about a lot of different things they were doing, and we have a lot of the same issues. But she was chiding me. She said, "You're putting a lot of pressure on me because you've raised your teacher salary so much. I'm going to have to raise our teacher salaries." And I thought, isn't this a great spot for Mississippi to be in?
Oh, yeah.
So we raised teacher salaries. We had the largest tax cut ever. We're the fifth lowest tax cut of states that have taxes. I think there's 7 or 8 or 9 of them that don't. But of the other ones, the other 40-something of them, we're the fifth lowest tax state in the country in income taxes. So we devoted all the money, as we talked about, to infrastructure, $2.3 billion. We devoted it to water and sewer and broadband and things that will be here forever. So in the last 3 years, there has really been an epiphany in the way state government is run, and its attitude towards generational changes versus let's just cobble together something that we can get out of here. So I'm real pleased, and that is a direct result, I think, of 52 men and women in the Senate and 122 men and women in the House.
Absolutely. Great to hear all that. Fantastic accomplishments for sure. Jam-packed episode so far. Will, let's take us home.
And I'm sure if you guys have been around Lieutenant Governor, he's not one to harp on accomplishments. I'm sure there's a laundry list of things that he did not touch on. The man just finds a problem, solves it, and moves on to the next one. And again, they're wide open over there. Wrap us up here a little bit today. Last year we kind of asked you a food question. We're gonna put a little spin on it this time. Not so much your favorite. You can certainly give us a favorite, but how about a new place? Have you been somewhere new that maybe just opened or that you had never been before to eat?
Well, when we had this, the last round of this where the water was shut off in Jackson, I thought it was a good idea to go to restaurants.
Sure.
So I went to Johnny T's down on Ferry Street down here, and I become friends with Johnny. Now, he came from Omaha here and went to Jackson State, stayed here, and he's running his restaurant and stuff. So I like to go down there and eat, at lunch and stuff. And so I'm down there, and I look over at the other table next to me, and it has Coach Prime on the table. And sure enough, I'm having lunch there and fiddling around and talking to Johnny T or whatever, and another senator we had brought, and here comes a Coach Prime. And so he's sitting there, and we're, "It's good to see you. You know, good luck this weekend." You know, we're just kind of like normal. So food's great, and I enjoy Johnny T's. I've been back a number of times.
That's great. I've actually seen it 1,000 times, but haven't stopped in. We'll have to pop in.
Guys,
Paul.
go by. The lunch is great.
I'll have to remember that.
Bar's open pretty much year round.
Remember that. We remember that too.
There you go. Yeah, we'll take the podcast team out to Johnny T's.
That's right.
Governor, we really appreciate it. Great episode. Thank you
Good.
so much for joining
Good to
us.
see y'all. Thank you for having me, and y'all just work real hard and make sure you stay in Mississippi. We're making it a better place.
No doubt. Love Mississippi. All right, let's go ahead and wrap up. I want to thank our listeners out there for tuning in to the Extra Mile podcast. You can watch and listen to episodes by visiting gomdot.com/the extra mile. Remember to follow us on social media at Mississippi DOT, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn, etc. We would like to thank our editor, Drew Hall, for making things go behind the scenes today for us. And without further ado, let's wrap things up. Remember to drive smart out there on Mississippi highways.